Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Grace Angela Henry, known as Angela, and it's a privilege to be with you tonight. I stand on the shoulders of my civil rights worker parents and their enslaved African and Taino ancestors before them. I am the stepmother of 2 sons who grew up in Wappingers, Pleasant Valley, and Red Hook. I have a degree from Harvard. I have lived and worked in Africa. I have traveled 48 of the 50 states and 29 countries on 5 continents. But I am a resident of Hyde Park, where I first experienced being called the N-word. At the ripe old age, well, let's just say I was well over 50. I'm honored and humbled to be your moderator tonight and anxious to hear from you. Now I'd like to introduce the co-hosts of this evening's listening town hall, County Executive Marc Molinaro, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, Jody B. Miller, Commissioner of the Dutchess County Commission on Human Rights, Ms. Eloise Maxey, President of the Northern Dutchess NAACP, and Jennifer McClinton, President of the Southern Dutchess Coalition. Thank you, panelists, for being hosts for being with us. We're also fortunate to have with us this evening a panel of community leaders for us to call upon for answers and comment as needed. Reverend Dr. Jesse Void Bottoms Jr. of Beulah Baptist Church in Poughkeepsie, Minister Stacy N. Bottoms of Beulah Baptist Church, Councilwoman Yvonne Flowers of the City of Poughkeepsie, Bishop Deborah Gause of Holy Light Pentecostal Church in Poughkeepsie, Commissioner Jody Miller, William Patterson, Case Manager at Nubian Directions, Ken Roman, Dutchess County Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Emergency Response, and Karmen Smallwood, Dutchess County Assistant Commissioner of Youth Services. Thank you, panelists. A little housekeeping. American Sign Language interpreters are available this evening, and the video of the interpreters can be pinned if you wish to use the ASL services. And now let me explain tonight's format. We will start by hearing from our hosts, and then I will call on people who signed up to speak this evening. You are all on mute now, but you will be unmuted when I call upon you. And if you have selected to share your video with us, everyone will be able to see you while you speak, but only while you speak. So turn it on now if you would like us to see you when I call on you. Each person will be given 3 minutes to share their comments. We want to get to as many people as possible, so we thank you for staying within the time frame. I know many of you have written out your remarks in advance so we can hear the essence of your comments in a 3-minute time period. Thank you for that. And finally, I may call upon a panelist if you have asked a question they can answer or if they can shed any additional light on your remarks. County Executive Marc Molinaro, you've been holding regular town meetings throughout the COVID-19 crisis. Tonight's town hall is different, isn't it?
Thank you. You're correct, Angela. And you just experienced why tonight's town hall is even different than all of the ones that we generally hold. And thanks to the work of the Human Rights Commission and others, we've held countless numbers of these kinds of conversations, the important and difficult and necessary ones. I apologize to those of you who are participating that we couldn't all come together in person. This pandemic has taken a lot from far too many. I certainly know the human toll. But it also has taken away our ability to congregate with one another. And this is a conversation, frankly, that would benefit from our interacting together. So thank you for participating tonight in this virtual way, but also thanks to the panelists and those who have helped to organize, and to Secretary Jeh Johnson. Thank you for your participation. As a former Dutchess County resident, and certainly your family remains here, you will provide us, I think, invaluable insight. We're grateful for your participation. It is clear, without question, that as a community and as a society, we have been confronted in this moment in time with the real need to soul search, to listen to one another, and to confront what has been the experience of so many. A country, a community that doesn't always treat everyone equally. And tonight is our opportunity to begin again an important conversation with all of you I want you to know that what you share this evening is not the end, but merely the beginning of what will be many more conversations. We're very fortunate that every town, village, and city, 20 towns, 8 villages, and 2 cities, are represented on this at this town hall meeting. First time ever. Supervisors and mayors from every community are here to listen. Your comments and your experience and your concerns are not going to be overlooked. They will form the foundation of dialogue that we will have to confront issues in law enforcement and criminal justice, the need to address education and skills training, housing, the need to confront poverty. All of what you share tonight will be invaluable and an important part of the foundation upon which we will confront these challenges together. Without question, problems come at us much faster than solutions. But if we are committed to this, and if we are honest about the reality of racism in our community, in our own lives, and if we seek, I think, to bring people together, I am hopeful this community will continue to grow, continue to improve, and continue to ensure, as difficult as it may be for some, that everyone in Dutchess County and beyond are treated with the respect, the equality, and the protection they deserve under the law. And as a community, we embrace one another, regardless of where we come from. It is, I think, exceptionally important that we engage in this conversation, and we are here tonight to listen. And from there, we will have many more opportunities, I hope in person, to build on this foundation. Thank you. And I want to introduce a good friend of mine, co-host this evening, someone who has continued in service and is a good partner here in Dutchess County, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney.
Well, I thank you, Marcus. Appreciate the opportunity to participate tonight. It's a special honor for me to be with my friend, Secretary Jeh Johnson. So proud that the Hudson Valley can claim you as a favorite son. I'm also thrilled to be with so many people I've worked with in other contexts. I know my friend, the Reverend Dr. Jesse Bottoms has joined us tonight from Beal Baptist Church. I know folks from Nubian Directions. Thank you, Angela. Thank you all who are participating. You know, I think this is a time when white people with power should listen more and speak a little less. So I'm going to speak less and listen tonight. I do want to tell you that I come to this conversation, obviously, as your representative in the Congress. I'm proud that we've passed sweeping police reform legislation called the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. It contains critical changes, like a national ban on chokeholds, ban on racial profiling, use of cameras, both on officers themselves and on dashboards, better data, a national misconduct registry, things that we believe, working with the Congressional Black Caucus, will make a real difference in the way all of us can expect to be treated by the police. And those are important changes. I do think in this difficult conversation, the most lasting changes are the ones of the heart. And so I come to this conversation not just as a politician or a congressman or a policymaker, but also as someone who put his 2 daughters in a car yesterday to go visit family. They're 17 and 19. My daughters are African-American and Native. They present, you know, the way any African-American would in a car. They aren't the daughters of a congressman when they drive out my driveway. They're people of color in a vehicle. And I worry about that. I don't think I understand as a white person what African-Americans experience in this country. I don't think any white person can fully understand what African-Americans go through in the United States, but I worry about it as a dad. And I think that when we can find through love and concern paths through this thicket of difference and fear, and can find ways to cross those lines of difference, that's where change occurs. And I want to be part of a generation that changes this. Maybe we don't change it all. Maybe we can never change it all, at least in our lifetimes. But we can be part of the progress that other generations have achieved. Other Americans have done real things. So these are the same painful, difficult injustices we have been facing for 400 years, but we're a different society than we were even 20 or 30 or 50 years ago. And in the diversity of our society, we have an opportunity, I think, to create real lasting change and to make our contribution to making it a better country for everyone. And so with that, I want to stop and give it back to Angela, I believe. And thank you all for your participation. I look forward to hearing what people have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman. I know you've had your own experiences of discrimination and prejudice. We really appreciate your being on this evening and for helping to host. I can see more people logging in. We have over 300 people thus far. We have a full list of people who've signed up to speak, so we have determined that we will continue the conversation until 7 o'clock this evening. Now it's my honor to introduce Jeh Charles Johnson, Esquire, to get us started. Jeh Johnson entered the legal profession to help people, and that's what he's been doing as a lawyer and a thought leader since 1982. He was the first African-American partner at the prestigious law firm of Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison. He served at President Obama's request as general counsel for the United States Department of Defense. He served as assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of New York. And if you watch Billions on TV, you know how important that is. He was nominated by President Obama and confirmed by the US Senate as the 4th US Secretary of Homeland Security in 2013. You have seen him on ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, NBC, and PBS, speaking on Homeland Security, civility in American politics and dialogue, and recently on equal justice in the courts. More importantly, he's a graduate of Roy C. Ketchum High School in Wappingers and married an Our Lady of Lourdes graduate. Secretary Johnson, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being here. Unmute yourself, Jeh.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I was born September 11th, 1957 in New York City. When I was 6, my dad decided he wanted to bring his architecture practice to Poughkeepsie. And so my mother, father, my sister, and I, we all moved up to Dutchess County in 1963. We lived for a year in Pleasant Valley on Bower Road, and then purchased a home on Cottam Hill, further south of Poughkeepsie. There are memories that I have about the experience that will always be with me, that happened as if they were yesterday, though they were over a half century ago. For the most part, I had a happy childhood, 2 nurturing parents. We were the first Black family to move into the area of Cottam Hill. But I still remember one day, one of my friends, his sister, we were playing in the driveway and the sister came out and said to my friend, "Don't you remember, Dad said we shouldn't play with Negroes." In 1967, I was transferred from Sheaf Road Elementary School to Oak Grove Elementary School. I was in 6th grade. One day I was walking out the front door of the school. I was getting on the bus with all the other kids, and a kid looked me right in the face and called me the N-word. I was stunned. I went home that evening and I mentioned it to my parents. I never saw my father more angry, and I didn't want attention called to myself. I didn't want him to do anything about it, but he told me he was going to call the principal. And the next day I remember the principal was standing out by the school buses, keeping a watchful eye over me. And I was embarrassed. But that was my life growing up in Dutchess County, in Wappingers Falls, in Poughkeepsie. There were painful memories about being in the minority, distinctly in the minority in the 1960s, growing up in Dutchess County. I was a lackadaisical poor high school student at Roy C. Ketchum High School. The guidance counselor told my mother, "You ought to think about 2-year college for your son. Don't think about 4-year college for your son." It was not until I got to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, in the fall of 1975 that I realized all I could become. The inspirational sermons, the speakers on Tuesdays at Sale Hall on campus at Morehouse inspired me to become an A student and inspired me to become a lawyer. But even then, I never could have anticipated that in my lifetime, I'd see a Black president and that I would serve in his cabinet as Secretary of Homeland Security. I left Dutchess County in 1975. I went to Morehouse, I went to Columbia Law School. I began a career as a corporate lawyer in New York, and of course spent years in Washington. I now live about 70 miles south of Poughkeepsie in Montclair, New Jersey, just outside of New York City. Ironically, I did come home in a sense, and I had married the girl next door, literally. I grew up on 14 Edgehill Road. My wife grew up 15 Edgehill Road. I married a DeMarco from the Wappingers Falls community. We've been married 26 years, and we have 2 wonderful adult children today. And that is my life, and a big part of my life includes Dutchess County. I come home to Dutchess County wherever I can to visit my parents, to speak at Royce E. Ketchum High School, and I am a proud graduate of Royce E. Ketchum, and I'm proud to have grown up and lived in Dutchess County. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeh. We know you haven't forgotten where you come from, and we know that the communities have always been in the forefront of your mind as you've made decisions that affect us all. If you've just logged in, you've joined a listening town hall when elected officials, community leaders, and others whose decisions affect our daily lives can hear from those they serve. That's you. That's your family. That's your neighbors. So let's get listening. I'd like to call upon Van Riley to share with us. We're going to unmute you, Van.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying I appreciate this platform. Congressman Maloney, other elected officials, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Van Riley. Can you all see me and hear me clearly?
We can hear you. We don't see you, but we can hear you very clearly.
Okay, can you?
There you are.
Can see me now?
We can.
Okay, thank you again. Apologize. First off, I just want to say I am a 25-year resident of Dutchess County. I attended Marist College for my bachelor's degree in business and psychology and on to my master's degree in public administration. I am currently the senior assistant director of graduate admission at Marist College. I've worked in the service industry, I've worked in juvenile corrections, and now higher ed administration for the past 15 years. So I've seen the social, the academic, and the political side of Dutchess County, and it's a very educational experience for me. This journey is still being written. I did want to share a quick story of my first experience with racism, and it was when I went for my first job, and I was about 15 years old, and it was a courier service, and the manager got on the phone with the owner of the company and said, I'm going to hire him, and he's a basketball player. So that was a real educational experience for me, and it also taught me the lesson of accept people how they are, but also carry yourself in a way that reflects who you are. And my journey, and in my journey, all I wanted to do was change the narrative. When in my younger years, I had braids, I hung out, and I was treated a certain way, specifically by law enforcement, and I would react in accordance to how they treated me. As I matured, I learned how to carry myself differently and also not do what was expected. Unfortunately, I still get profiled, even as a professional, as a 45-year-old man with 3 kids, 2 of them adults, 1 in college. It still goes on, but I learned to adjust and to treat people the way I want to be treated, and also to reflect who I am instead of who someone else expects me to be. I can't say enough about my experience in the Dutchess County, and I've met great friends, built great relationships, and looking forward to building more. I do hope that as a community that reflects who we are and who we aspire to be continues to grow. And despite all that's going on, I do see the best in this county, and I see all the work that the elected officials are doing, like Yvonne Flowers, Marc Molinaro. I see Bishop Gores, Reverend Bottoms, and I know these people personally, William Patterson, and I just want to say I commend all you on your great work, but there's still a lot of work to be done, especially with law enforcement. I'm also a member of the City of Poughkeepsie Procedural Justice Committee, where it's made up of key community members as well as City of Poughkeepsie Police Department officers. And we're trying to work together to build relations with the community and allow people to see things from the other side. we're all in this together. We try to find common solutions to common problems, but we have to see them as common problems and not one against the other, or one group against the other group, or one racial group against another, or one group of people in a specific level of socioeconomic status against another. It's just one community. We have to work together to achieve a common goal. I do share that fear or anxiety with my kids, especially with a 21-year-old son who's about 6'4", 290 pounds, and he's soft as a teddy bear, but that's not the way the community sees him. So I try to prepare my kids as best as possible for the real world, but also tell them not to compromise who they are, their integrity, their self-respect, and also their core values. So
they're fortunate to have you as a role model.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So that's a little bit of my journey. And again, you know, the story's not finished. This is a challenging time for all of us, but hopefully we'll continue to have platforms like this to share our experiences and come together even stronger as a community. So I thank you very much for this opportunity to share.
Thank you, Van. Thank you very much. I'd like to call upon Cammie Jones from Hyde Park. Cammie, we will unmute you.
Hi.
Hi, what a beautiful portrait that is.
I think it's changing. Okay, I'll start my video. Hello, everyone. I'm Cammie. Thank you so much for this platform. Thank you to the elected officials and community members for this opportunity to speak on this evening. My name is Cammie and I live in Hyde Park. I have lived in Hudson Valley for close to 11 years. I serve as an associate dean at Bard College. I'm an engaged citizen and I'm a proud Black woman in this region. I also am a Black woman originally from the South. And I can say that I have experienced far more situations of racism and sexism in Dutchess County than I've ever experienced growing up in the South. And that's a hard story that I've had to deal with. I'm actually quite shocked a lot of times by the treatment that I see of not only myself, but other people of color in this region, because I was taught that the North was different, that it's open-minded, it's free, it's welcoming. And I have been able to maneuver in a lot of leadership opportunities in this community. But also a lot of times I'm reminded that sometimes if I push too far in regards to social justice, I'm told that I'm stepping out of line. And that leads to a lot of silence, not only for myself, but also a lot of women of color and people of color. When I think about my time as a leader in this county, I am so happy to see elected leaders that look like me in some areas of government. But I also am saddened to see a lack of opportunity for people of color to be seen, heard, and valued within our political structures throughout this region. When I look at the tables of power, I do not always see myself. This isn't the first time where a national event has led to a community conversation. The ideas are taken and communication eventually breaks down. And that's daunting and disappointing for me, the students that I serve, as well as my community members. And I begin to ask myself why. Why is it so difficult for women and men of color to be heard and represented? Why aren't we always at the decision-making tables once these conversations occur? And not just at the highest level of the county, but something that should be done within every town in Dutchess County. So I come before you this evening asking that you hear us and you create a sustainable pipeline of engagement where we are heard, we're seen, we feel safe in our communities, and we also can be a part of rebuilding equity in our communities. And in order to do that, we need new voices, a diverse group of voices. We cannot be okay with the status quo. Furthermore, not only do we need a seat at the table, we need opportunities to create our own tables that are focused on equitable, inclusive, and fair justice. As a resident, I want progress. I hope for progress, but I also am concerned about the momentum, because if it is lost, we will not see the active changes that we're discussing this evening. That's the only way we would abolish systemic racism. I've seen the movement become stagnant at times in our county around needs for people of color. Yet I do look forward to hearing and seeing change. I hope that we can work together as electives, as collectives as well. And I hope that this is the first step that will allow us to have even more conversations and not forget that the movement will continue. We want advocacy, we want a better future, a better county, a state, and a world. And in order for that to happen, we need a sustainable framework of all individuals in our communities having an opportunity to step forward and speak. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak on this evening on this important issue.
Thank you, Cammie, for your comments. Thank you very much. And I'd like to call upon Karmen Smallwood, who's the Dutchess County Assistant Commissioner of Youth Services, for a response.
Thank you, Cammie, for your comments. I too can relate to your experiences as being a woman of color in leadership positions. I've experienced racist microaggressions since I was in elementary school and had to continue to face those even throughout my professional career. My goal and my hope being in this position as Dutchess County's first Assistant Commissioner for Youth Services is to promote systems that resolve around equity and inclusion. Having been pushed aside and not allowed to sit at the table for so long has caused me to want to provide open access to other folks who haven't had the opportunities that I have. I believe that one step that we need to take is to have these crucial conversations within all levels of not just county government, but also in schools and community groups about what it means to be different, what it means to have to deal with so many challenges in order to have a seat at the table, and to develop some real solutions for how to be more inclusive with folks, to bring diversity in thoughts and ideas. So I thank you, Cammie, for bringing that to the forefront. And I am definitely grateful for my position and for the county executive, Marc Molinaro, for appointing me to serve in this capacity so that I can help other young people achieve success and provide opportunities that I wasn't afforded to have when I was growing up.
Thank you, Karmen. It's a big task that you have taken on, and we're grateful for your willingness to do that, not only to help your colleagues and your peers, but also, as my father used to say, to take a hand backwards and lift some folks up along with you. Thank you for that. I'd like now to call upon Karmen McGill. Karmen is a community leader many of us know, and she also sits on the Human Rights Commission. Karmen, will you unmute yourself? Or I guess we can unmute you, sorry. Okay, I just got the message. She wasn't able to join as she had planned. Hopefully she'll hop on later on. May I call upon Deirdra Brown? Deirdra Brown is a Poughkeepsie resident. There you are. Hi, Deirdra.
Hi.
Would you share with us a little bit of your background? And I think you'd like to talk to us a little bit about racial bias in Poughkeepsie.
That's right. I just got disconnected and rejoined, but let's see here. Okay. All right. Hi. Hi, everyone. So my name is Deirdra Brown. My name is also Jen Brown. My middle name is Geneva, Jeneva. So it's the Jen Brown. And I'm an attorney here in Poughkeepsie. I've been here about 10 years, a little over 10 years now. And I'd like to speak specifically to the issue of discrimination in the Dutchess County workforce. First, I want to say I'm really glad that our leaders have convened here tonight. I am of the opinion that our African-American leaders really know the issues. They've heard our concerns and our complaints. In fact, they are the repository of those concerns and complaints. So this gathering tonight is for the benefit of Marc Molinaro and some of the other, let's say, pale-skinned members of our leadership, because they're the ones who need to hear this. And what's more than that is oftentimes, and I was looking at Mr. Molinaro's series of outreach programs, and I just listened to Karmen talk about what she's doing now as part of the executive branch, and all of those things are wonderful and really needed. But what always lacks in these initiatives is focus on changing the minds and hearts of the pale-skinned people who work in these institutions. You see, institutional racism is a two-sided coin, and African Americans have been doing a lot of work, and sometimes it can feel like we're not making progress. And I think that that's because we don't take time to look and and to focus on reconditioning the minds of those who've been doing things the same way for such a very, very long time and don't know how to do it differently, whether it's unconscious or conscious. You know, one of the things that people like to throw around nowadays is this idea of implicit bias. You know, there's science behind the attitudes and patterns of behavior that perpetuate discrimination. So I wanted to speak directly to Mr. Molinaro, who I have a great respect for after his efforts during the COVID pandemic. But I want to talk to you about the disparities in your workforce. I want to talk to you about the fact that African Americans are grossly underrepresented. And based upon data that was put together by your office and published on your website and signed off on by you, African Americans, the disparities between minority representation and white representation in your workforce is so bad that you are essentially akin to a hardcore discriminator. And that means a lot of money that should be going into Black households is not going into Black households. And what's more, it's so important to me that in addressing that issue, because I think people of goodwill are going to want to address that issue, I think that in addressing that issue, it's going to be important for you as the executive to take the lead on focusing on the subjective decision-making practices of supervisory personnel, because that's where we find the institutional racism. No one's calling anyone a bigot or a discriminator or a racist. That's not the issue here. That causes dissension and separation. But if we're honest about this thing, then we need to give some attention at least to the subjective decision-making behaviors of your supervisory personnel. Let's start there. Let's take the initiative and let Dutchess County be the first to demonstrate that we can really have a workforce that mirrors our citizenry. So thank you.
Thank you, Deirdra. There were quite a number of points that you brought out that were very helpful. There are a couple of people here taking notes madly. So thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. I would like to call on Siobhan Velez from Poughkeepsie. No, she wasn't able to join. Okay. Is Curtis Clare with us? Curtis, we're going to unmute you. You wanted to share something about an experience with the police.
Yes, hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi. Some years ago, because I saw that it was a much better place than Brooklyn at the time, with a lot of the racial issues, the cops, and other things of that nature. But coming here now, 20-some years later, it seems like it's starting to be like Brooklyn again. You know, I have a 16-year-old who is 6'3", 6'4", 270 pounds, and he wants to learn how to drive, but I'm afraid for him right now because I've been stopped by several police officers in the town of Poughkeepsie and the city of Poughkeepsie, but I find the worst part of being stopped in a town. They're very verbally abusive towards me. And a lot of the times, even one incident where my wife was given a ticket and the cop, the way he talked to her, the way he treated her, she called me crying on 9. I had to go comfort her to bring her back home. And these are the things, it's not only with Black men, it is with Black women. I had one incident where I was parked over by Smith Street Projects, and I put in a complaint with the supervisor, and I came down to put in a complaint, and the first thing he said to me is that I was very articulate, that I lived there. I said, no. I said, I live in the town of Poughkeepsie. I'm a homeowner, and I pay taxes. He says, okay, that explains it. And at the time, I didn't realize, you know, what was going on because I was so pissed off about what had happened. But after I thought about it was that he felt like because I wasn't a part of the project and I was a homeowner, and when he said I was very articulate, that's saying to me that, oh, you're not a dumb one. That's how I took that later on. And I just, I was just flabbergasted. And I'm at the point now where I love Poughkeepsie. I mean, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I love Poughkeepsie. I used to work at Dutchess County Jail. I used to counsel some of the young guys there. Some of them, they didn't know how to do applications. They didn't know what to wear, and I would coach them. Because some of them, they was repeat offenders because no one took the time to talk to them. And I started talking to them because of Reverend Bottoms, Pastor Bottoms. I was at one service where he had said something that was very inspiring to me. And I look up to him because I have a great deal of respect for him. And I just want, well, I'm gonna get back on topic. I just think that with the police department here, you need a better diversity. They need to better understand us as Black people. I mean, not all Black people are bad, not all white people are bad. But when you're stopping a car or you're pulling someone over, I know it's a scary thing at night, but what that officer has to know is that that individual in the car is scared too. Sometimes he might be nervous because I don't know what I did. I don't know what's going on. So two wrongs won't make it right, but I mean, we need to better understand each other as a group. And I think that if both sides could sit down and have this conversation and both talk, we could better understand each other. And maybe that'll help us get through what we're going through. Because it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And it's not just here, it's abroad.
Thank you, Curtis. Thank you for sharing that. I wonder if I could call upon Ken Roman, who is the Dutchess County Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Emergency Response. Although that is not the same as the police department, of course, his agency does have close ties to law enforcement, and I wonder if you might make a couple of remarks.
Surely. Thank you very much. First of all, thanks for allowing me to be part of this. I got to tell you, it broke my heart to hear Mr. Clare's comments. My past career before working for the county was a town of Poughkeepsie police officer for 32 years. I retired there as a captain in charge of the patrol division 2 years ago. So it does impact me, and I am very disheartened to hear those kinds of things. That being said, one thing that I really have to say I enjoyed about what he said is that, you know what, sometimes cops are, they're scared, and sometimes they're, it is a frightening situation. Another thing he mentioned is that we both need to understand each other. I have been doing this kind of work, diversity training for law enforcement for over 22 years. I can tell you things are better. They are far from perfect. They need a lot of work. And I am very, very eager to work on this topic and this project here in Dutchess County. The county executive has asked me to take an active role in partnering with other members of the community to take this project and really move forward with it. I'm going to be reaching out to several members of this panel that have gathered here today. We do need to do a lot of work, and law enforcement gets it. And I have to state the fact that I've been in touch since the incident in Minneapolis. I've been in touch with all the chiefs of most of the large major police departments, at least in Dutchess County. And I've had lengthy conversations with them about next steps and what we need to do and how we need to address the governor's order that he put out for police reform, and also the presidential orders have been coming out as well. We desperately need to work on this. All the chiefs understand it. This is something that they've all been in agreement with. A matter of fact, I'm going to be meeting with them in person, which is going to be my first live in-person meeting in several months. But I'm going to be meeting with them to discuss this very topic. And this is something that I think is, we've been getting buy-in, which is great. And it's sad that it took a terrible tragedy to get people to come to the table. But I can tell you this much, that right now, we have got a bunch of people from the community, from all the leaders, the mayors and supervisors of Dutchess have committed to supporting this effort. Once again, the Chiefs of Police Association, members of the legislature have reached out. Obviously, the county executive and the Dutchess County Sheriff Butch Anderson has also jumped on board with this. This is something that is going to take all of us
Yes, thank you.
to work together, not just a few or a handful of people, but it is going to take a bunch of people. And it's just, I think we're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
I wonder if I can call upon William Patterson and then on Yvonne Flowers. William?
Unmute. Thank you very much. Honored to be here, absolutely, to represent Nubian Directions, as well as myself as one of the elders on the panel, 65 years old, retired. I came out of retirement to come back to Nubian Direction to work with the young people. And I always tell them, I'm from the future. I came back to rescue you because I've had a lifetime starting with 4th grade with seeing racism. I have gotten to a point where I almost became complacent. This is what happens when you see no change. You start to feel like I have to exist in spite of this. When it comes to the police, I spent 20 years at IBM, and at IBM, there's a thing called the Blue Book that is the rules and procedures of how an employee carries themselves. What I found was it does not matter what rules and procedures we put out there, because it's always going to be an interpretation of the individual and how they're going to treat you. So I experienced racism at IBM, terrible racism at IBM, but I stayed there for 20 years and was able to have a successful career, get my education there. Now, when it comes to the police in Poughkeepsie, I also have a different perspective because I was a club owner. I actually opened 4 clubs in Poughkeepsie, starting with Jordan's Jazz Club, which was the largest minority business in Dutchess County. I immediately found out that there's a narrative that the police have. There are good police and there are bad police. I take the time to sort through the bin. But for racism, there is no sorting through the bin. If you're Black, I hate you. Whereas I teach and I know we have to understand that there has not been progress in America without Caucasian Americans by our side. And that's why this moment is important, because we share in the burden of making this change. So police are scared. At the clubs, you see that they're scared. They don't want to come in and do a police action, so they're hoping that you close up to make their job easier. I have met police that are very, very good. I will not say their names, but there are several. There is one female police officer in the city of Poughkeepsie that has, beyond any police officer I've ever seen, bonded with the community in a way that if she needed my help, I would back her. Now there's the solution right there. Get the kind of police in there. Diversity training is not going to change the culture. Culture eats policy for breakfast, is as the term goes. So we have to find a way when we talk about diversity that it's effective enough to get through. Those instances that Curtis described, we all have seen, all of us. It's standard. So I just wanted to say, Curtis, thank you for bringing that point out. It was very, very good. And it's something I think we all can feel. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Yvonne Flowers, we're going to unmute you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Clare, I want to thank you for sharing your experience. Unfortunately, we have many others in the city of Poughkeepsie who have shared the same experiences in the town and in the city of Poughkeepsie. I know as a city council member in the city of Poughkeepsie, you know, living in the 5th Ward and overseeing the 5th Ward, I do have many experiences and encounters with some of our police officers that treat our Black community differently. One thing that we've been doing, and some other council members, we've also has experienced that, and we've got together and worked with the police department, and they have implemented implicit bias training, procedural justice training. Also, they formed a procedural justice committee, and that consists of community members and also our police department, as it was brought up before by one of the other speakers. In that particular, in that meeting that we have, in that setting, we're getting to understand each other's perspective and helping the police understand why we feel this is acceptable and why we do not want to be treated in this manner. And the same with the police are understanding, we're understanding how they're feeling as they're approaching a stop or as they're approaching a situation. The thing is opening this dialogue so we communicate with each other to understand where we're coming from, to understand that, you know, you in the back of your mind, you have these biases when you're approaching a person that also contributes to the way you're treating them. And we've been having these dialogues, they've been very intense, but out of that, we'll walk out with an understanding and coming to some solutions of how we're to make it better. We've worked with the police on trying to improve the communications with the city by the different events that they have, by going into schools, talking with our kids. And I know when we don't bring up this one particular officer, there's a woman officer who carries teddy bears in her car because she goes to a domestic violence situation, and I've seen her take down the aggressor, but at the same time, minutes later, she's bringing the teddy bear over to the young child who's traumatized by what the person has seen. So, you know, we do have some police officers that do need some additional training. They need to be reprimanded when they're not doing what they're supposed to. And so when you went down to make the complaint, you know, we're right now going through the efforts of improving the complaint process, because I've been through it myself, making complaints and find out they went nowhere, or to even find out they happened to disappear. And I'm a council member. So we are looking at some measures of actually fixing that also, because at the end of the day, the police cannot police the police. You know, so we are making some changes on that, and we need more people to come forward to express what they've been going through. So that way, you know, we can continue to make those kind of changes in the right direction and do it in dialogue with each other. So we totally understand how we're moving forward. So we're all on board in doing that. So I just want to.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yvonne. I'd like to call upon Micah Jumpp. If you're here, we're going to unmute you. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes, we do.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Micah Jumpp, and I'm a rising college senior and a lifetime resident of Dutchess County. I want to thank you all for creating this space for us. I am 21 years old, and my experiences with racism started early. Traumas that I thought were resolved resurfaced with George Floyd's death. First, let me say I am very thankful for growing up in the Wappinger Central School District and also this community. In school, I went from being spat at, called Aunt Jemima and the N-word, to becoming an overachiever, and that's when I became different from the other Black students. Kids started using the N-word around me, and they were never reprimanded. At the time, I didn't feel empowered to speak up. I was told, "You're the whitest Black person I know. My family likes you because your parents are Jamaican, making you Jamaican, and Jamaicans aren't Black." I have only had 3 African-American faculty and students throughout all my years of WCSD, one being a teacher. In the community, I was just another Black girl. I learned very early to keep my hands out of my pockets and free so I wouldn't be thought of as a suspect. My family and I are constantly followed around and surveilled or ignored in stores to this day. No more silence. Last week, I wrote an open letter that quickly turned into the WCSD change movement. My letter names problems, proposes solutions for WCSD, and encourages personal statements. I already have 280 signatures and 27 personal statements describing racism and bias from alumni, current students, parents, staff, faculty members, and taxpayers from all ethnicities, religions, and identities. This letter has a comprehensive plan, including but not limited to offering classes on African American and Indigenous histories in the Hudson Valley and America, mandatory cultural competency classes, creating safe spaces for BIPOC, including ENL and the LGBTQ students, to talk like we're doing now, revising curriculum and books to reflect people of color and our experiences in a positive, complete, and accurate light. All our schools are graduating students who are highly qualified for academic study, but at the same time are ill-equipped to handle racism and bias. Unintentionally, we are creating people who cannot thrive in diverse environments. This is not just a WCSD problem, it's an American problem. There is a failure to reconcile with our past, and it affects the present and it will affect the future if we do not act. So please be a part of the WCSD change movement. We can be pace setters. Please log in, read my letter, submit personal statements, and sign in support. This will bolster our presentation to the WCSD Superintendent and Board of Ed. I will link the letter in the comment section. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Micah, and thank you for sharing painful experiences. It takes a lot to expose oneself and to be vulnerable with people that you don't even know. We appreciate that. Thank you also for the work that you're doing. You know, I often get email chain letters of looking for signatures, and I ask myself, where is this going? What is it going to do? So I'm glad to hear that you have a plan and that you are going to take the suggestions to the people who have the power to make the change. Thank you for that. I'd like to call upon Philip Johnson, if he's here, to talk about a police encounter. Philip, we're going to unmute you. There you are. No, I think he may have disconnected himself by accident, but we'll come back to him. Hopefully he'll get back on. May I call upon Kathleen Hazard from Pleasant Valley? Okay. Diamond Mima from Poughkeepsie? No? All right. Diane Dixon from Fishkill, are you with us? No. Isis Benitez, are you with us from Poughkeepsie? You had a college experience you wanted to share. There you are.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Isis Benitez.
Isis, thank you.
I am a Dutchess County resident in Poughkeepsie, raised. I just wanted to discuss that I did not really receive racism until I hit college. I went to Marist College. I went to Poughkeepsie High School, and it wasn't until I hit Marist College that I received heavy racism. It wasn't until that I started to work at Payless Shoe Store over on Route 44, where what used to be it, that I received racism from my own boss. And the fact that it took me 17 years to, like, when I was like all fine and dandy, well, life wasn't all fine and dandy for me, but like, I didn't really witness the racism that I was actually seeing, or the blunt racism. It took me 17 years till I actually got hit with it. And I'm sitting here like, is this really what the world is about? Is this really what I want to grow up in? Is this really what I want to sit here and see, to see what my kids want to see? I have always been like iffy about Poughkeepsie, I'm not gonna lie. And I have eventually, like just recently, I'm not gonna lie, started to grow in a heavy love for Poughkeepsie. And I work in the community. I work for Planned Parenthood. And I know that Poughkeepsie needs a lot of work, but no one sees that. And no one sees like the back burner. No one sees the fact that it's hard for us to get the resources that we need. Dude, over on Route 55 on Stop and Shop, it's hard for people of color to get food over there because they don't have a car. Even though it's like the local Stop and Shop, they don't have a car to go anywhere else, and that Stop and Shop is always like not packed, or it's not restocked. You have to go out to Route 9. You don't have a car. You don't have money for the bus. You don't have this. You don't have that. It's hard for people of color to get that. You see a bunch of white people getting what they need. I know I'm everywhere, but like to get what they need, they get this and that. It's just hard. It's just difficult to see that happen. And for me to experience all that, even in college, I didn't have like I didn't have the richest life. So even in college, it was hard for me to see my students, my classmates sit there and go right down the road to Stop and Shop in Hyde Park. And I couldn't even get that much, and I was working my ass off.
So one of the resources that I hear you saying is sorely lacking is transportation, and I think
Yes.
also grocery stores,
Yes.
local grocery stores that would be easy to get to. Are there other resources that are lacking that you would like elected officials to know are in need? What else is needed?
The COVID-19 testing is needed. Not just drive-throughs. I know that's like the best thought, but
if you don't have a car,
thank you. If people don't have cars, can't really get that. And then also, along with everyone else, I hope you guys are checking the chat because that's blowing up. The police brutality, the police stopping. There's no need for that if you're just sitting there floating about. All of that needs to be rechecked and reevaluated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That's it for me.
Great. Thank you, Isis. Thank you very much. I'd like to call on Laritza Melendez. No. Okay. Royal Parker, are you with us? Ajamu Ayinde, are you with us today? Okay. Amelia Cabrera, City of Poughkeepsie. We're going to unmute you. There you are. We don't hear you, Amelia. You are unmuted. Amelia, see if you can unmute yourself. Click on the little microphone that has the red slash through it. Okay, we're going to come back to you, Amelia. We're having technical difficulties, but stay on. We're going to come back to you. Robert Pemberton, have you joined us today? We see you. We're going to try to unmute you. Robert, see if you can unmute yourself by clicking on the red microphone that has a slash through it. Okay, I think we're having trouble. I'm not sure why we're having trouble with the microphones. Gabriela Vega, are you with us this evening? Okay, I see you. Can you unmute yourself? Send me a message in the chat section so we can see if we can help. Okay, we seem to have run into some technical difficulties with our system. Everybody, please stay on. I do want to call on Jody Miller, who is the Commissioner of Human Rights. Before Jody was the commissioner, she was for many years the executive director of the Mediation Center. So her whole career has been involved with mediation, with getting people sitting at a table who perhaps ordinarily wouldn't sit at a table, or for whom it is difficult to sit at a table, have a discussion and come to some agreement. Jody, will you talk to us a little bit about your experience in dealing with such issues as tensions between city or other government agencies and the public, and how conversation could lead to reform?
Yes, thank you, Angela. First, I want to say I want to thank everyone who has spoken tonight. Everyone who's talked about their experiences, which I want to acknowledge. These are, number one, not easy things to talk about. They're traumatic to talk about, and yet you're sharing them with us with the intention that we will hear what you're saying and we will act. And so I want to be clear about that. Everybody can hear me, correct? Yeah, okay. So I want to be clear that, and I'm looking at the chat as well, about people are saying, we say these things, we talk, and now we want to see some action. And so one of the things that I found while working at the Mediation Center, whether we were working with courts or schools or communities or any gathering where you're bringing people together to talk about and address and make decisions about important issues, is that people have to be willing to come to the table and have the hard conversations that they want to have. And that's a choice, right? Sometimes people are saying, we're talking about this and nobody's doing anything, so we're not going to continue to talk. So that's a choice. And what I would say is, one of the reasons that this forum is happening tonight is to listen and take action, to listen and make decisions that are going to make a difference, at least from my perspective, and I know from the county executive and the congressman's perspective, not speaking for you, but I know that's your interest in having this tonight, that is critical. And so I'd say, you know, this is not about softening conversations. This is not about minimizing. This is not about neutralizing or skating over what people are saying, but really amplifying the voices and sharpening and highlighting what those differences are. And that's where change can really happen. That's where those changes in hearts and minds can also happen, is when people are talking about the hard things and where those differences lie, and they're not neutralized or smoothed over, but they're really amplified, so then people can hear them and then make decisions and make changes as a result. And those changes, we've heard this over and over again, have to happen, right? Internally, you're hearing something differently. Internally, you're making different decisions. And those decisions then, what changes for me? What do I understand differently about myself? What do I understand differently about somebody else? What do I do differently in the community? And then how does that translate into a policy change? So I would just
Thank you.
say that that's how I see what we're doing here tonight, and in all my experience, in all my years of conversation at the Mediation Center, and in this role right now, those changes have to go up into policy changes.
Thank you, Jody. Amelia, I think we can hear you if you speak.
Hi.
Great, hi. Thank you so much for your patience.
Hi. Okay, I'm Amelia Cabrera. I go to school in Poughkeepsie, in the town of Poughkeepsie, and I've lived there for 3 years. And right now I'm feeling frustrated because I've been coming to town halls back when they were in person. And there was a town hall I came to last year where we were talking about the police. We were talking with the police, or that was supposed to be the intention. And it ended up just being a really long kind of celebration of the police, which I found to be a little bit, it was rude to me because there wasn't much to celebrate. From my vantage point, they were talking about diversity and meeting with kids, but there's so much more to policing that goes on. And meanwhile, we can sit here and talk again, but like everyone has been saying, I want to see some action. I want to see some change, not just in the police department, also in City Hall, also in the courts. There's just so many obstacles for people who don't have the money, just straight up people who don't have the money or the time off work. And it's frustrating to me that we're still just having conversations. Whole time, many people have been talking about this for years, and I know that there's many people who are sitting on this panel right now who have been talking about this for years, who maybe are feeling the same frustration as me, but it gets me upset to just still be in a listening stage. How are we still in a listening stage? So I hope that you hear my anger and hear where it's coming from. Just as a person who, this is my home right now, but I've lived in other places, and you know, racism tastes the same everywhere. You know, you feel it under your skin the same way everywhere. And marginalization, like as a woman, is the same. You feels the same way under your skin everywhere. So we all feel the same pain when we're scared, but this is not a time to be operating from a place of fear of getting sued, of fear of saying the wrong thing. It's a time of action. Like if there's anything that we're learning from like the protests across our country, which we can be proud of, is that this is a time for action. And so I hope that this isn't the beginning of conversations for you. I hope that this is the middle of conversations for you, but I hope that this is a reminder that there's a lot of people counting on everyone who's elected right now to do the right thing, and emphasis on do,
Right.
follow through. Okay,
Thank you.
I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amelia. Robert Pemberton? Robert?
Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
hi. Thanks so much for your patience.
How you doing? Well, I'm actually a former resident. I'm the founder of Stop the Violence movement. I have worked with a lot of people in the community. I would just say, to echo on the young lady that went before me, we have to stop talking. You know, I've sat up here the last couple of weeks, watched the City of Poughkeepsie Common Council, and it's actually nauseating to see that they can't even get the right to know that's been kind of out there for 2 years past. And it's a big issue in the City of Poughkeepsie. It's a big issue all over America. I do not want the public to get caught up in whether it's defunding the police or whatever, but I do see a big difference when you give almost $14 million to a police department and $1 or $2 million back into the parks and recreations. We have a problem. I mean, like I said, I grew up in the Poughkeepsie in the 80s, and unfortunately I was part of seeing the horrific bloodshed in the mid-90s in the streets of Poughkeepsie. It's the same now, but a lot of things are missing that the county and the city can kind of get back on track here. Stop dragging your feet on a real community.
Yeah, given your
Stop
experience.
dragging your feet on the community center. Stop dragging your feet on rebuilding some parts of Poughkeepsie that hasn't seen anything new in 30 years. You know, my job is right now working with a couple people, former police officers, to try to get the City of Poughkeepsie Common Council to look at a community policing board that we desperately need in the city. I offered to fund giving out the business cards or the baseball cards, whatever they want to do as far as the police identifying themselves and leaving something with a community member. But I haven't heard back from the Common Council. But I would say to just kind of piggyback on the young lady, I'm sorry, my daughter's fussing in the background, but to just piggyback on what she said, we have to stop talking and just act. The people that vote, we vote our officials in to make a difference, to make them tough decisions. And I think it's time to make them tough decisions, especially when you're looking at not just the City of Poughkeepsie, but Dutchess County as a whole. There is a problem with systemic racism. It was appalling to see what the police chief said last week. And I got to work with these police chief and the police department when I come to Poughkeepsie and do events. So I'm not bashing them. It's just to sit up there and tell the public there's not a problem when there's a problem. Because any officer who broke a person's jaw and that was then accused of excessive force, that's a problem. You have a bad police force.
Yeah.
It's not the one bad apple thing. If you have one, it's a bad police force. We got work to do.
Thank you.
And we have to do it. We have to change it systemically. They have to put feet on the street out in the community. But you know, that's another time and date. I've talked to Mr. Molinaro, who hates me calling him that, but and you know, I met Sean Patrick Maloney before, and a few other people. I know Yvonne. You know, it's time to, especially when COVID's over, let's get in the room and get things done. It doesn't take, you know, like the young lady said, years after years after years after years, and it's just talking.
Yeah.
Like, let Dutchess County lead the way. I heard somebody say, well, let's look around and see what people do and then we'll follow them. How about lead the way?
Thank you. And thank you for your suggestions as well. At real action steps, much appreciated. I want to call on Minister Bottoms, Minister Stacy Bottoms, who does a lot of work with youth, and I'm wondering if there are resources that you want to list for us.
Hello. I didn't hear you that well, Angela. Could you repeat that?
Yes, and you're echoing, so you must have two things that are that are broadcasting where you are. You do a lot of work with youth, and I'm wondering if you have anything that you can share with us, either in terms of resources for young people or resources for people who are interacting with our youth in ways that are not helpful and not positive.
Well, when it comes to resources, you know, different grants and stuff do help us with community events. But the one thing that bothers me and troubles me when it comes to our youth in the community is that we do not have enough for them. Now we have great community workers. We have great community workers, people who are out here in the community making things happen for the youth to keep them occupied. But it's not as easy to get funds for our young people and for some of the programs that that are needed for them. And we really fight and really work hard to try to make things available for our young people to keep them out of the streets, to keep them out of trouble. So that is, funding is definitely an issue for us when it comes to our community. The other thing, as far as for our youth, is the education, is the schools, and after school programs. You know, we have Satara Brown, we have a few people who do Nubian Directions, who do a lot for our young people, but we can do more. And I think that, again, I believe that it's like we have to fight and do so much to try to get funds. And I think that they should be easily available for us to be able to provide stuff in the community for our young people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. And Yvonne Flowers, may I call upon you?
What I wanted to do is I wanted to respond to Mr. Pemberton, and I respect you dearly because I appreciate the work that you do. You come into our community when, you know, when things happen, and you kind of get us motivated, inspired to deal with the violence that we have in our city when that time comes. So I appreciate the work that you do. As far as the right to know, I know you mentioned some people were frustrated about it not being passed at this point. And basically when the right to know came to us about 2 years ago, that was a time when our police department was starting to implement some things on their own. And like I mentioned before about the implicit bias training, the procedural justice training, the setting up the procedural justice committee, getting the body cameras, discussions that we were been having before the right to know was even brought to us. So we were already making efforts to improve the relations with our community. And then this came from the outside, from someone who was not from our community, telling us that we should pass this in order to make improvement when we were already trying to make improvement at that time. So we asked just if it can hold off until we can implement some of the things that we've already been working on to put forward, and then see whether if the right to know will be another mechanism that we will want to implement. So that's what was going on, and that's why it's coming back to us now, because at this point we're looking at it, and we're actually we're all in favor of it, but we want to make sure that we are implementing something that's going to work for our community, for the challenges that we are having. Some of our police officers are already giving out police cards. We also had an issue with the police officers didn't wear the name tags. We had to make sure that they had new uniforms that had their names on their uniforms, and their badge numbers were on there, so they were clearly identify who they were. The business cards is a great idea because of the fact that you walk away with something in your hand, so that way you can refer back to if you need to, or you can make a comment or file a complaint if you need to, if your encounter is not what you expect. So we are looking at it very closely, and we're close to passing this. But it took a while because we need to do this carefully and make sure that we have the input of all those involved to make sure that when we pass any kind of laws that we have the mechanism to make sure it becomes effective. you know, to make sure that the police are on board, so that way, you know that every encounter you have, that card needs to be given to the person. And then what happens if they don't? So we also have to look at that also. So we're not just going to jump in and pass something because someone decided to jump up and say, hey, this is what we want you to do for your community. We need to do what we feel is best for our community. And we felt like we needed these other things to be in place and give the police a chance to implement this, and at least to show them that we appreciate what they're starting with, but there are some more things that they need to work on. And the right to know, we felt like it's another tool to help mend that relationship with the community, but it wasn't the be all. So I just wanted to explain that to let people know, because that's something that keeps coming up of why we took so long to even consider it or even put it on the agenda. So
thank you. Thank you. I want to call on Micah Fendenko. Hi there.
Hello. Actually, I would just like to give up my slot and refer it to Melissa Johnson instead specifically.
Okay, we have a few more people who had signed up in advance, and then we will get to her. Thank you. Niall Clark, are you with us? Does she have to unmute herself? There you are now. Thank you.
All right, here. So I'm gonna forfeit mine to my mom.
Hi.
So she's here.
I just wanted to say that, you know, change, we have to remember that change should not take a lifetime though. We need to have change. Change has to take place. People cannot continue to live in this kind of terror, anger, frustration, social injustice in a town, in a city like Poughkeepsie. It just shouldn't continue. I remember as a child at Smith Street Projects, Poughkeepsie, New York. At that time, both Black and white children lived there, and I was playing with a child who was white, and she was called in her house, and then she came back out and told me that she couldn't play with colored people. At that time, you would say colored people. You referred to Blacks as colored people. So I began to think that maybe there is something wrong with colored people. And I probably began to search for a long time from that point on. What is going on? Why is this happening? And I found out a lot more when we would visit Alabama, where my mother was from, Troy, Alabama, which is just outside of Selma, Alabama. When I was in high school, Poughkeepsie High School, I'm a Poughkeepsie High School graduate. It was time to vote and register people to vote, because you can now vote when you're 18. I was gung-ho going forward, trying to help do that. There was a teacher named Dr. Michael Bagley, who was a professor at the high school, whom the kids had demanded that we had Black studies. He was a Black studies teacher. He was encouraging, supportive. He was an example that you can go to college. There were teachers like Mrs. Grant, Mrs. Clark, no relation, but they were all examples of you can do this. This Poughkeepsie is yours too. And so the idea that I was getting back to is that when I tried to register people to vote, a representative, a couple of men came from the Dutchess County voters office, where you go to vote, register to vote, came and knocked on our door. And it was very intimidating to my mother, who grew up in Troy, Alabama, outside of Selma. This was terrorizing to her, that two men from the Dutchess County voter registration office came to question about who was registering to vote. So, you know, those kind of experiences, we have to get rid of them. They have to stop. We have to make real changes. That kind of thing involves racism, because that's going to affect how we live, what kind of life we have if we can't vote. So to intimidate people for voting was horrible. The police department needs change. You know that everybody knows that they need training. What I did find out, because I've worked with different police departments, is that the officers themselves know who the bad apples are. I don't know if there's a way to address that, but they know, because you have the good and you have the bad, but they know who the bad guys are. So we maybe can start with that. And I also wanted to just say that, we just need more Black faces in employment. It's time. It's a big change for Poughkeepsie, Dutchess County. Black people need to be employed.
Thank you.
Why can't you employ Black people? What's the problem?
Yep, we've heard this from a number of folks this evening, so thank you. Thank you so much. And now thank you for sharing your mom with us. We have a few more people. I know that you want to hear from Melissa, and we will call on her, but we do have other people who signed up in advance, and I want to respect the fact that they did do that. Mario Johnson, are you with us? There's Mario. Thank you. Welcome.
Yes, I happen to agree. I'm sorry, I'm in my backyard having some technical difficulties, so I'm on my phone. But I just want to say, you know, from a different perspective, we've seen this before. We've seen this with racial profiling. We've seen all the talking groups, talking heads, the Northern Dutchess, NAACP, 100 cups of coffee. And I'm saying that because I was in a lot of those meetings 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And I think the young lady was right. You know, it's enough of listening tours, enough of talking. It's really time for some concrete plans that spell out how we address inequities in our economics, employment, and education, and housing, and health. I mean, there's so much. It's not like anybody sitting on your panel doesn't know. They've known for years. And it's a matter now that we have to get to this point where we see massive social unrest, even in Dutchess County, even all over the country, to say, well, we need to listen to the problem. I think it's clearly spelled out. And maybe it starts at the city council, maybe it starts at the county legislature, or maybe it even starts with the church leaders to start saying, we need to demand more for our citizens. And I think that's what's lost in this whole spectrum of things. We're not viewed as citizens. When you stop me, if I'm an officer, I'm gonna stop you like I'm stopping my mother. I'm being kind, courteous. I was the first one to introduce a racial profiling bill, because in Dutchess County, with Dutchess County legislative tags on a Lincoln Continental, I get pulled over by white officers who keep their hand on their gun. And one time I heard it go click. So I know for a fact that, hey, it's not easy in Dutchess County. We've seen a lot, we still see a lot. And this is just the people you may have on today, maybe afraid to speak their minds, even those who work for the county, because we've all seen enough and we live it. And we talk amongst ourselves. But who's gonna really have the courage, the real courage to say, I know it, I know what the issues are. Let's put together a real plan. Let's look at our county budget, our city budget, and really start funding those programs that's gonna make a real difference. I watched the Human Rights Commission become defunded at one point and then come back with no teeth. Let's really start putting our money where our mouth is and really start having some real action. That's what it's about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Aquinet Hales, are you with us? Satara Brown? Satara, are you still with us? There you are.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Satara Brown. I live in the town of Poughkeepsie and have a nonprofit that's located in the city of Poughkeepsie, serving the entire Dutchess County. I attended the Arlington School District. I did many curricular activities growing up in the city of Poughkeepsie and throughout the county as a whole, which prompted me to form a nonprofit here, specifically due to the need for the programs and the youth for the youth of the city of Poughkeepsie. I started a summer camp after-school program to better serve the youth of color here in Dutchess County. It's really time for a change. It's time for children of color of the county to stop being stripped of their opportunities. There's very limited opportunities here for the youth from babies on. We all know the saying, it is easier to build strong children than to repair a broken man. Let's live by that. With the amount of funding that's allocated, there's no reason that there's not a program available for every youth, and I'm speaking from experience. Organizations have been here in the county, specifically in the city of Poughkeepsie, that hasn't moved the needle one bit in 10 years, yet sweep up majority of the funding. We cannot allow our youth to suffer because of these actions. I have no intentions to receive financial gain off of Black and brown children. It's time for new ideas and individuals to have seats at the table. What we are doing right now is not working. We can have a million conversations, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, but as long as people are sitting in their offices collecting six-figure salaries at the expense of our young Black and brown kids, we will not move forward. I love Poughkeepsie. I love Dutchess County. I'm tired of seeing elected officials simply allowing wrongdoing to occur. I'm tired of seeing leadership sitting in their offices instead of rolling up their sleeves and getting the real work done. Come into the community. Speak to the people of the community, not the selected same individuals who attend every event. Are they really a representation of the community? It's time to get real. We have no choice, and it starts with the youth of this county. When national events happen or high-profile events in the area, many gather, who are very unknown to the community, yet speak on behalf of the community. There's countless individuals in the community doing the work every day with no other interest than to help the Black and brown children of the community. The work that is actually making changes, but it needs to be done on a larger level. We need to defund these hefty salaries and programs that are not serving our Black and brown kids. We need to change what we are putting our resources into. It's time for reevaluation, reconsideration, and revamping. Thank you.
Thank you, Satara. Satara, what's the name of your organization?
Rebuilding Our Children in Community, Inc. And we serve a large amount of kids on a very, very, very small budget. So these organizations that the county specifically are funding, you guys should take a visit to these actual programs, because I'm there and I see the little amount of kids that they are serving and what they're actually doing.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Would you please type the name of your organization in the chat box for everyone?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one last, Melissa, what's Melissa's last name? I'm so sorry. Johnson, Melissa Johnson. All right, we're gonna find you and unmute you. All right, we see you, hang on. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, can you see me?
We see a beautiful photograph of somebody behind a car with some stars.
That's okay, see me.
Oh,
Hi, guys.
Hi.
So first I wanted to start, my name is Melissa Johnson, and in my daughter Jamelia Barnett and Jalissa Dawkins' case, I want to say that I have written statements from other people that was around with the case. So again, good evening, my name is Melissa Johnson, and unfortunately my daughters were brutalized by the city of Poughkeepsie Police last year and are still fighting for justice. Mr. Molinaro, you should be ashamed of yourself for hosting this forum while the county attorney is falsely charging my daughter with crimes when they were victim. You have had the power since last year to drop the charges and still have not do so. I get emotional when I'm talking about this case because, you know, am I at? So yeah. So you can't claim to be concerned about people of color when you're still prosecuting my daughters. Congressman Maloney, you have Black daughters just like I do. And the fact that you didn't reach out to my family when my Black daughters were brutalized by the police, you should be ashamed of yourself. Then make it worse, you endorse Mayor Rallis when he support the officer's action. and didn't punish them or held them accountable for what they have done to my daughters. They left my daughter Jamelia Barnett dripping in her period blood after slamming her to cold concrete and falsely arresting her, and you have still said or done nothing, and you represent them.
Thank you.
I've been in the court system since Julissa Dawkins was 12 and Jamelia Barnett was 15. Jamelia is going to be 17 this month, the 25th. And we're still in court fighting for justice, and still I've not got justice at all for my daughter. Still have not had another court date to know what's going on, what's the next step. All I ask for is justice. My daughter has never been in no type of problem, never had any police back and forth or juvenile case at all. And they're still tied up in the system for what? Nothing. Nothing. And I want to move on with my life, and so my children want to move on with their life. Jamelia is so traumatized from this that happened to her when she was 15, coming home from school, and this happened. There were 8 down. In the video, you could even see one of the police, William, hand on my daughter's behind while she was on her menstrual period, and still no justice for Julissa, no justice for Jamelia. When enough is enough? When our Black kids are all died by police hand, when are we going to get justice? When can this be over? When it can be over for my children to move on with their life, the next step. My daughter Jamelia used to go to the Marist College program every summer, have great grades. She lost concentration on that. She gave up. She wanted to be a judge. She gave up on that. Like, I want to see justice for my children. We're meeting like this, and I'm still waiting for court date. I feel like the system failed me and my children. And I hope to see justice soon, not later, soon. Soon. And thank everyone that's been commenting. And please, you guys, do not give up your chance to talk. Please talk. I want to hear everyone. You know, Maggie saying we have enough. We've been uncomfortable for so long, and we still uncomfortable as Black people in this community. You understand? Not that we're saying that we don't care what white folks have to say. We do. You understand? But we want you guys to stand beside us, not in front of us and guiding us. We want to guide. We want to be business owners on Main Street. We want to own house and keep them. You understand? We don't want to be behind anymore. Enough is enough. Show our color and say that we are part of this community. There's families, there's mothers, there's the homeless people. Choose us sometimes. Help us. Get justice for all. It's not just me. Justice for my daughters, justice for all the Black people that's out there that's not being seen. And this police, William, he needs to come out. He's still doing what he have done to my children. He have done it before that. And the mayor support him. You understand? And I feel that enough is enough. Enough is enough. I went to the police department, and I have them tell me that if he shoot me in my head, would I want him to be arrested? That should never be out of no police mouth. A sergeant mouth at that. And I'm a Black woman, a Black mother, a Black wife. My husband is in the military. He's in the Navy. He's in China. He's in Japan right now, serving for America, serving for us. And we still can't get justice. So all I'm asking is justice.
Thank you, Melissa. It's very powerful. Thank you. This has been a mixture. It's important to hear people's personal stories. We want to thank everyone for their candor, for their willingness to be vulnerable and to share very painful things. We also want to thank people for their ideas, their suggestions. We want to thank you for asking people to be held accountable. It's not easy to speak up, especially when you feel that you've been speaking up and speaking up and speaking up and nothing has changed and nothing has happened. So we're grateful for your willingness, and we're grateful for your help and your support in moving forward. So, elected officials, you're on notice. You've heard, you've listened, you've taken notes, because I've seen you scribbling and typing. This is not the end. Marc Molinaro wanted this to be a first step, And some of you have asked, why haven't we heard from him? Because he's here to listen, along with the other elected officials. So they've heard you, and now let's see what will happen next. I want to thank all of the panelists as well for their thoughtfulness and for their support. I also want to thank the staff of Marc Molinaro's office for putting this together and making it happen technologically despite a couple of glitches. And I want to thank those of you who are listening, observing, but not speaking, because you too want to hear as part of your education and as part of your figuring out how you can be a support and a help. Thank you all. We will stay in touch. Keep an eye out on the website and Facebook for next steps, and we'll see you again soon. Good night.